welcome to the Business Pulse. I'm Rod Martin here with Dean Owen, and we are giving you one of our very favorite features from the Freedom Chamber. The Freedom Chamber is the place for businesses and business owners who really love this country and want to stand against the things trying to destroy it. We can help you. You should come and join the Freedom Chamber. We are here today to talk about current events as we do every week and give you some insight that can be helpful in the work that you do every day. So let me start by asking Dean Owen to tell us about the employment numbers.
Well, we're starting to see some smaller employment numbers than what we've seen in the past. One of the questions I have is how much faith do we have in the BLS? Because you've heard me often say we just didn't take the L out of BLS. But we have significantly lower immigration, and for all practical purpose, we have no illegal immigration anymore. There's still a little coming across the northern border, but those numbers have draconianly been cut, and that is keeping our numbers down. So when we hear of a 50,000, 70,000 new jobs in the private sector, that's not a bad economy. That's a function of we don't have all the illegals. The economy's resetting itself. We're readjusting into a good place. These are positive changes, but they are gyrations, and that's what we're going through. So we're getting some numbers that sound like the economy's not doing so well because of the job creation, but we're massively deporting people and pulling jobs out of the economy. And so the numbers are not what we're used to, not what we've been looking at for the last 25 years. So something has changed, and a 50,000 jobs report is not a bad report. It's different now. So something to be aware of and not to freak out about. And I know the news, the lamestream media will make all kinds of hay about how bad that is for the economy because they want us to dislike Trump and disapprove of him. But don't fall for that trick.
Well, that's coming off several months where we exceeded the jobs number by about 2 to 3 times as much as expectations. So you got to put it in context. A lot of good is happening. CapEx is exploding. We're beginning to see all of that $18 trillion in new investment Trump has recruited really start, actually creating jobs, creating factories and so forth. So we got to factor that in too. The other thing you mentioned is the illegal aliens. And I don't know what it is about people, but they tend to get what they want and immediately forget that that's what they wanted. So, Trump does some amazing thing, like completely shut the border, which is a first in history, and everybody forgets about it 10 minutes later. So no, we haven't had any meaningful illegal immigration in 18 months. It's just amazing. I heard Markwayne Mullin say the other day that we are now up to 3 million people deported in less than a year and a half. That's incredible. And what's really cool about it is the innovative approach that the Trump administration took. I don't think we've ever had this before. They actually replaced Biden's CBP app that was designed to help illegal immigrants come to the United States, replaced that with CBP Home app that actually allows you to process yourself out of the country, which is just extraordinary. You can sign up for a free plane ticket. You can get $3,000 of expense money, and off you go. And off they are. We are up to about 500,000 official, government-induced deportations, 2.5 million self-deportations because of the policies of this administration. That's extraordinary. And at the rate they're going, by the end of Donald Trump's second term, we're going to have a lot fewer illegals. And that's good across the board. I mean, first of all, it reduces law breaking. But second, things like housing. We've got data now that suggests that housing prices have been inflated by as much as 30% based on all of these millions of people flooding into the country illegally and needing a place to live. That supply and demand, folks. If you massively increase demand without meaningfully increasing supply, guess what happens? So all of that is beginning to sort out. That's all good news.
Yeah. So, yeah, and noted that wages are up 3.5%.
Yeah.
That's beating inflation, the true inflation number. So, having a massive number of illegals here does depreciate wages and depress wages for those in lower mid-level careers. And so what we're seeing is we're not seeing the executives' pay going up by a bunch. We're seeing the lower and middle income, which is what we need to see. They need to be there. So.
Well, it absolutely is. And, the big point, and J.D. Vance has done a good job of making this point repeatedly, as has the president, but the big point here is that it used to be possible for a blue collar worker who just went to high school, who didn't go on to college to get a gender studies degree, just normal folks, which is, believe it or not, still the majority of this country, could actually have a rewarding career in a factory, in a car plant, on a drilling rig, whatever it was, and actually support their family without a second income. That has largely been lost, and that is a tragedy. And what this stuff does in reshoring industry, and by the way, Trump announced yesterday that he's going to slap 100% tariff on generic drugs imported from outside the country, but he's putting it off into 2028 to give those companies time to build pharmaceutical plants in the United States. So your prices won't go up, but the incentives for these companies will change dramatically. All of these things create high-paying jobs for skilled labor, but not necessarily, the girl with blue hair at State U. So this is a huge improvement for the real economy and for real people, and we're beginning to really see it come together. Yeah, Dean, what's your read on oil? We have renewed hostilities with Iran, which seem to be going incredibly well. We've moved 900 commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians haven't been able to do a thing about it. They have been able to harass and attack a handful of ships, but 900 have gotten through in a very short amount of time. We're blockading their coast. We're blowing up their ability to do this stuff. And we're seeing tremendous pipeline growth across the Middle East as well as here. So all of these things are the background for what do you think about oil and gas?
Well, I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago that the Iranian regime would not make a deal. They can make a deal, they can't keep it. So we haven't killed enough of them yet. We've killed a bunch more, but we're not there yet. And we don't know where that number is. What number do you have to kill? How many of them do you have to destroy? Because you can't negotiate with them. And that's their doing, it's not ours. But all we can do is kill enough. What is it? How many are enough? That's an unknown. But when we get there, we'll see it and we'll know it. And we're doing a pretty decent job right now of taking out the IRGC and their headquarters and their ability to wage war and terrorize the Strait of Hormuz. We're doing a great job at doing that, and we've lost a few of our service members, and we obviously pray for them. We think about them. We honor them. We honor their sacrifice. But it is the military, and we typically, in just military training, would lose more people than we've lost in this conflict. So, I mean, our military folks do some really dangerous stuff, and they do it well. They do it safely, but you do enough dangerous stuff long enough, you're going to get hurt. And that's what happened here. but we haven't killed enough of the IRGC yet. When will we? I don't know. There is a number. There is a time point where there's so few of them that the internals in Iran will, the internal forces will overthrow it. The country's in a civil war. You've got 3 or 4 different factions all fighting each other, trying to get power. But primarily, you've got the Arnish and the Kurds joining together against the IRGC. So it's a function of time before that just takes care of itself. Doesn't mean a bunch of American boots on the ground. There may be some boots on the ground, but not necessarily Americans. But, here we are at $90 a barrel. The hair on fire liberal idiots were screaming it was going to be $300 a barrel, and we're at 90. And yeah, that's a pain for people. But we don't spend as much on energy as we used to. It's not as much a pain as it was in the 70s. And we'll get through this. And then, man, Rod, you think about this. What's this world going to look like when you do not have Iran sponsoring terrorism all over the world? Oil at $40 a barrel, peace, countries, the Middle East coming together with Israel and Abraham Accords and defending themselves and creating their own NATO-style alliance. Man, that's a glorious place. And we're not there yet, but we're moving there fast.
Well, it really is moving fast. And to just walk through some of the magnitude of what has been achieved here, there is not a single major conflict in the Middle East that isn't armed, funded, and directed from Tehran. We've been saying that for quite a while now, and that's true. Well, here's what we're achieving. The media does not want to address these points, but these are the points. Iran had built an extended quasi-empire across the Middle East. They had what amounted to an Iranian army stationed in Gaza, Hamas. They had what amounted to an Iranian army stationed in Lebanon, Hezbollah. They had what amounted to an Iranian satellite in Syria under the Assad regime. They had all of these pro-Shia, pro-Iran militias just harassing the heck out of Iraq and out of the Iraqi government. Okay, and then of course you have the Houthis, and we haven't fully dealt with them yet, but let's walk through the rest of it. So we have kept the Houthis from harassing shipping in a meaningful way for quite some time. Thank you, Donald Trump. You go to Gaza, Hamas is handing over its government to this technocratic board that ultimately reports to Trump's Board of Peace. Okay, you don't do that unless you lost. I mean, the ceasefire is mostly holding. Hamas is actually stepping down from power. That's a win. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, that's a huge win. In Lebanon, we just had further progress on the agreement that Marco Rubio struck there. And we actually have Lebanese forces moving in to take control of key areas in southern Lebanon from Hezbollah. This is a big deal, folks, because Lebanon has been at war, legally speaking, not always shooting, with Israel since it declared war on the Jewish state in 1948. It's one of the longest running wars in world history. And Marco Rubio got the president of Lebanon and the prime minister of Israel to sit down and agree to Lebanon recognizing the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the state of Israel. That's amazing. It's a huge breakthrough. And again, Lebanon agreed to do what it is obligated to do under international law and get control of its own territory. If we had some armed group sitting on the Rio Grande shooting into Mexico, that wouldn't be okay. And we would have an international obligation to get control of that group and that territory. Lebanon hasn't done it in 50 years. Now they are. So that's a huge deal. Syria. We have a regime that Donald Trump took a gamble on in recognizing it and supporting it, but all of a sudden they're very pro-U.S. We just had Chevron and a couple other U.S. majors announce huge deals to build pipelines or rebuild pipelines across Syria to take pressure off the Strait of Hormuz. And finally, we've got a new president in Iraq who is actually arresting the leaders of these pro-Iranian militias and disarming them, which nobody thought was going to happen. That was on nobody's bingo card. So the Iranian empire is gone. It's just gone. And it's happened just under this president. And not only that, but now we've taken away Iran's ability to really threaten the region. First of all, cutting off their money. Second, eliminating most of their ballistic missiles. What they have left, are going to have a hard time replacing. And of course, the nuclear weapons program that was meant to shield. So this is actually going phenomenally well. The domestic politics is confused by a whole lot of factors that are beyond the scope of this discussion. But the truth is, we're winning, folks. We're winning something we haven't won in 47 years, and it's really quite remarkable. Now, I suggested oil and gas for a minute, and we ended up rabbit trailing a little bit into the other topic we were going to do. But just very quickly, let me point out, the UAE is doubling pipeline capacity from its own oil fields to Fujairah on the Omani coast. That completely bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. The Saudis are significantly increasing capacity in their pipeline from Ras Tanura to Yanbu on the Red Sea. That is going to significantly reduce the pressure on the Strait of Hormuz. These new pipelines, they're old pipelines that have been shut off since the 90s, but new pipelines for our purposes across Syria. That's taking oil from Iraq and possibly Kuwait all the way to the Mediterranean. So you're not only talking about largely replacing any need for the Strait of Hormuz, eliminating Iran's leverage over global oil markets, you're also talking about cheaper transport and shorter distances. All of this is good. All of this dramatically reduces the price. So when Dean, you're talking about $40 oil, well, if you eliminate the Iranian threat to Hormuz, if you take that risk premium out of global oil prices, if you transport the oil through hardened infrastructure across land to seas Iran can't reach, even if the Iranian regime survives, and I don't think it will, but even if it does, they're toothless. We have absolutely defanged them like the bumble in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They are not going to be able to do anybody any harm anymore. That was the goal. And Donald Trump is committed to finishing that job because this is a legacy thing for him.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that people don't give credit for. They assume that today's answers and today's situation is going to stay the same. But we forget that we innovate, we change, we adapt, we improve, we make changes. So, it's a little bit, I think some of the Iranian dictators and mullahs should probably be Democrats because they think they can just pass a law and nobody will do anything different or change behavior. But you start threatening the Straits of Hormuz, what happens? You find a way around it. So they can't do that. And that's what countries are doing. And we're going to get there with that cheap oil. And oil that goes through that pipeline doesn't have the risk premium, which is typically about $20 per barrel. And we were before the conflict back in January, February, we were seeing oil at $55 a barrel. So when I say 40, I'm not stretching. There's some math here that's pretty conservative, actually. The math would say we could get down to the $35 barrel oil. I'm not going to go that far, but 40's very doable.
Well, I kind of hope we don't, because that'll be bad for U.S. producers too.
True.
But it'd be great for consumers.
Yeah. And I tell people frequently, what was the last thing you bought that was not transported on the truck? There hasn't been very many things. So everything gets transported. That's radically deflationary once we get there. I think we're going to get there before the midterms. The midterms are looking like they're starting to look really positive, and we're headed there. Everything's been geared around this idea that make sure the economy is booming, make sure the capex is exploding, make sure that the shovels are in the dirt by the midterms. So give these great job numbers. Just noticed recently that the number of job openings versus the number of job seekers is about 7.1 million each. So we're in a really good spot there. It's starting to happen. We said it was going to, and then here it is.
And it is. And there's no question that the resumption of hostilities here puts a little bit of a dent in our long-standing timeline of all of this, really culminating by the 1st of July. But I don't think we're off course by very much. And again, you look at all these numbers, I realize that we have consumers out there who aren't feeling those numbers yet, but that's how things work. If you were saving for retirement, you wouldn't see big numbers on your retirement account in the initial stage. The compounding takes effect later. And so we're seeing the same thing here. A bunch of excellent things are happening and they're about to start compounding. Some of them already are, but really tremendous stuff. I'll give you an example. I don't think anybody was paying close attention to this, but on the 3rd of July, so the day before America's semi-quincentennial, 250, folks, it's amazing. The day before that, Donald Trump's stated goal of bringing 3 new nuclear power plants online was achieved. They're not commercially producing yet, but the goal was to have them at critical, and they were. The last one hit on July 3. Why does that matter? Well, first of all, you need a ton more electricity if you want to run a booming industrial economy. To reindustrialize America means you need a lot more power. Second, if the hippies all want to buy an electric car, somebody's got to make the electricity for it. This just floors me. California's been shutting down power plants and refineries and oil wells and everything in sight for decades. And then they wonder why they pay the highest gasoline prices in the nation, and they're dependent on Middle Eastern oil, the only part of the United States that is. And you also need power if you want to deploy things like Golden Dome, which is intended to shoot down enemy missiles and drones and all these different things. And of course, AI data centers. So all these things need power. Nuclear is the key. And if we can start building a crazy amount of nuclear power in this country, everything gets cheaper, everything gets easier, and our dominance is secured. One other thing on that, you saw today, the president has agreed to the deal with Saudi Arabia to build a commercial nuclear infrastructure there. No weapons, nuclear power plants, but guess who gets the exclusive contracts to build all of that? Yes, the United States. Every other country is excluded from the contracts, just us. That is an incredible achievement for this administration's trade diplomacy.
It is, and it's one of the things people need to understand, that this president is a businessman first. He is a good politician. He's a very, very skillful politician, but he's a businessman first. And what's he doing? He's looking for ways to generate revenue that do not involve the U.S. taxpayer. And he's been doing it all along, and he's doing a phenomenal job of it. But you got to look at, that's how this president thinks. He thinks about revenue, expenses, and balance sheets and P&Ls, and that's how this president thinks. And it's the first time we've seen this in my lifetime. But it's been a very long time since we had someone in Washington, president that thought like a business person and tried to run the country, not run it like a company, because a government is different than a company, but hey, revenue and expenses are the same in both. And he understands that. And we're making it work.
You say it's been a long time. I'm sitting here racking my brain. I can't think of there ever having been a time. I mean, this is a really unique approach to the president's role, to go out and recruit $18 trillion in investment into the private sector to boost industries here that are crucial to national security, to unleash a shipbuilding boom, to do all and the pharmaceutical thing I mentioned earlier. Oh my gosh, we are completely dependent on China for our pharmaceuticals, and they're our number one geopolitical threat. That's insane. So, across the board, the president is actually embracing, what we heard from the chairman, I guess, of General Motors in the 50s, the business of America is business. Yes, the best welfare program is a job. If you create enough high-paying jobs, everyone does better, all boats rise, and the future is bright for our children and grandchildren. So on that note, everybody needs to know how to find you online, Dean. Tell them.
Well, owencpa.com, OWENCPA.com. Connect with my team. The conversation and friendship is completely free. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. And Rod, you got to tell us about your daily emails, because they are absolutely amazing. And if people aren't watching them, they probably don't really understand the world.
Well, thank you. And before I do that, I just want to encourage everybody to go to owencpa.com, because Dean isn't just doing accounting. He's doing financial planning. He can help you, as he said, disinherit the government and not your kids. That's the goal. And if you're here in the Freedom Chamber and watching the Business Pulse, that's got to be high on your priority list. For our part, come to rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. Hundreds of thousands of followers online. You want to be one of them, come to rodmartin.org. And with that, it has been a great, great episode of the Business Pulse with all of you. Thank you for making it possible. Thank you for watching us every week, and we'll see you next time.
The American dream, full of grit, determination, and unthinkable achievements. Building and owning your own business is a monumental task. A place to find guidance, resources, and connections doesn't exist.
Until now. The Freedom Chamber.
A dynamic and innovative organization established to empower businesses across all sectors. The Freedom Chamber. Find us online at freedomchamber.net. Join us today.